I want yellow to think I'm being aggressive towards blue, but in reality I have my eyes on this tile right here. I'm probably not feeling as safe on this island as I did beforehand. That's really the biggest struggle between blue and red right now, who's going to colonize this middle space. Choice. That's really what makes for a great strategy game. What series of choices and dilemmas are players presented with that will have an impact on the rest of their experience that they need to navigate wisely. Choice is what allows for unique strategies to evolve, and something I've strived to enrich my game with. Whether it be pursuing economic or military advantages, it all comes down to what moves you make, what cards you save or spend, your patience, and timing. So as I play through the small scale scenario today, I'll reveal what I consider to be the best early game moves and strategy you can make to dominate the board. If you look back through history, the victors of almost every war have one thing in common: economic backing. As I've quoted before, infantry wins battles, logistics wins wars. Of course there's exceptions to this, but looking at the great wars of the 20th century, I think we all can agree that it came down to who could produce the most bombs, bullets, and other machinery. I think my game functions similarly. The more colonies you have, the more resources you can harvest, allowing you to train larger armies and replenish your troops. Colonies aren't the only economic advantage you can pursue though. We'll get to the other ones later on. But my overall game strategy can be summed up by this: always pursue economic advantage first, unless under direct threat of enemy forces. This doesn't mean I neglect purchasing units altogether, but early on I try to have as few possible to secure my defense and nothing more. This way I can develop my economic advantage, then go on the offensive. So let's pretend this is the start of a new game. The board is set up and everyone has already chosen their starting colony. Side note, each player gets 3 things at the start: a colony, a musketeer, and one of each resource card. I've set up a 3-player game, but it does go to 4 players. I'll be playing for each opponent, but really be focusing on red, which I'll be demonstrating an economic strategy for. Blue, I'll be demonstrating an offensive strategy, and yellow will be sort of a reactionary strategy. So from here on out, it will be unscripted. We'll just play through a few turns and see what happens. Okay, so red's turn first. First thing you do on your turn is roll the dice and land it on wheat. So yellow gets a wheat, blue gets a wheat. Go ahead and get those to them. All right, so as I said, each player starts out with one of each resource card. Red is pursuing an economic advantage, so really one of the first things I would like to do is build a port, which will reduce my trade bonus from 5-1 to 4-1. So that would be a great first step, pursuing an economic advantage. It also allows you to build frigates, which is nice. Just analyzing the board right now as being red, colonies need to be 3 tiles apart from another colony. So really there might only be one other potential spot in this area that a colony can be built. So it might become a race between red and blue to see who can colonize that spot first. So just depending on the resources I roll and the cards I collect, that might determine if I build a colony first or a port. Obviously, a colony is a great economic advantage because you're collecting more resources. I could also move my musketeer on this turn, but I don't see the need to do that just yet. I'm going to wait and see what blue does. So we'll say it's yellow's turn. Okay, so yellow has rolled a stone, and red and blue are the only players that have access to that. So they'll each get one. Yellow's actually in a really good situation right now early on because they're separated by the other players by this channel of water. So this will really buy them time to colonize this tile over here, even this wheat tile over here, so they can avoid military conflict altogether and just focus on expanding their colonies without any real need for defense or a large military. They do run the risk, though, if I were to build a bridge here, I could easily come over to their island and pose a threat. Even blue could build a bridge through here and get access to the island. But as for now, if I'm yellow, I'm focusing on saving up cards to buy another colony right here and right there. And he might as well start moving his musketeer that way, because to buy a colony, it needs to be in a tile with an existing land unit. Also, just a reminder, you can't build colonies on edge tiles. So that'll end yellow's turn. Let's roll for blue. Okay, so blue rolled lumber, and I think, yeah, everyone gets a lumber card. I'm going to keep the dice right here so I keep track of whose turn it is. Okay, so as I said, blue is pursuing an offensive military strategy, but taking a step further back, let's examine the board for them. They're in a great spot right now as far as resources go. They have access to the most variety of resources, I think, of any other player. They have lumber, stone, Mustang, wheat, and iron. So they'll be collecting valuable resources on pretty much every roll, all except for water, which is their biggest disadvantage right now. They don't have access to water, so they can't build a port right away. Actually, I don't know if they'll be able to build a port at all, since colonies need to be 3 tiles away. Let me see, 1, 2, 3. There's actually no space along these tiles for another colony to be built. They might be able to pursue this tile right here to build their port, but yeah, their options are limited in that sense. But let's check out their cards. So a few turns have gone by. They have one of each card that they haven't spent from the start of the game. They've also added a wheat, a stone, and a lumber. So let me think what we can do with these. Had to break out my turn card to remind myself the cost of items. It's kind of funny because they actually have the right amount of resources to build a port, but they just don't have access to the water. But in the spirit of them pursuing a military advantage, we'll say that they'll purchase another musketeer, which is 2 wheat. So they will spend their 2 wheat. They need to move this one out first, and they'll put their new one in. Now, being red, this should raise some concerns that they're already purchasing military units, because they could very easily march over and take over this colony. So being red, I would be concerned about that. And that might force me to push my economic strategy on hold and ensure my defense. Anyways, that will be blue's turn. Now let's roll for red. Okay, so we rolled a stone. Once again, blue and red get stone since they are adjacent. So let me break down my cards first. Like I said, I really would like to build a port first. That just gives you so many options. It decreases your trade bonus, allows you to build frigates. It would give me access to this island. And I think I have enough to purchase a port. Let me see. Yep, port is 2 wood and an iron. So I have the cards. One thing to consider, though, is I do have a maneuver on this card, which is ambush, corresponding with lumber. I have a whole video on that you can check out, but basically it allows me to ambush my opponent and take away their counter. So these maneuvers can be useful to hold on to, especially in a potential military escalation like this. Those could be great for tipping the balance of a battle while not spending too much resources on new units. However, I think it is worth it to go ahead and build the port, so that's what I'll do. Put these 2 lumber here, put my iron there. Now, positioning my port, usually I like to position my port as far away from all other players as possible, which would be on this tile here. The reason is that putting your port closer to other players means it's more within range and easier to blockade. It might not amount to anything, but any little advantage can help, so I think it's nice tucked away there. And I'm going to re-examine my cards and see if I have any other moves I can make. So I do have 3 stone, which is very nice because once I get another lumber, I'll be able to purchase a fort, and that'll guard my colony against any aggression from blue. They would need a cannon to attack my fort, and to get a cannon, they would need to build a fort of their own. So that would essentially buy me time to pursue my economic strategy and potentially de-escalate any potential conflict for the time being between blue. I think I'm also going to move my musketeer out to the stone tile, and the purpose of that is to put pressure on blue, and there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that blue may think I'm pursuing building a colony in this area, and I think yellow would assume the same thing as well, seeing me move my military out this way. But my secret plan is I think I'm actually going to build a colony on this wheat. I want yellow to think I'm being aggressive towards blue, but in reality, I have my eyes on this tile right here. So in a real game, perhaps that would relax yellow, making them put their guard down some. Okay, so yellow's turn. They rolled a iron, which everyone has access to. That's pretty rare, I think. Okay, so yellow is saving up cards to build a colony on this hill tile. Let's see what they need. The colony is 2 lumber, 2 stone, a wheat, and an iron. Okay, so they have 2 lumber. They only have 1 stone. I think that's going to be the most tricky for them to get because they actually don't have access to stone, so they'll have to trade cards in for that, which will be expensive. It'll be 5-to-1 trade-in. So iron and a wheat. They have almost all the cards it takes to build another colony, except for that 1 stone they need. And they only have 4 extra cards, so they'll have to wait to get a 5th card to be able to trade those 5 in for a stone. And they'll just continue their journey up to this hill tile to colonize it once they get those resources. If I'm yellow, I'm also probably a little concerned about red building a port. I'm probably not feeling as safe on this island as I did beforehand before they built that port. So I'd be in a rush to get this colony built so I can switch back to building defense. Okay, so it's blue's turn again. And they rolled a fish, which unfortunately they do not have access to. And it looks like red is the only one with access to fish, so he'll get 1. Now, blue, let's examine blue's cards. Blue has a lot of strategic cards. As you know, they have access to mountain and stone, which are the cards you need to build walls and cannons. So them pursuing a military advantage, that's definitely going to become useful. I'm actually curious, they might have enough to go ahead and build a fort. Yeah, 3 stone and 1 forest. So they're going to go ahead and build a fort. It is 3 stone, which they have right here, and 1 lumber. And if I'm blue, I'm probably going to send my musketeers out this way to secure this land so that I can build my next colony there. That's really the biggest struggle between blue and red right now. Who's going to colonize this middle space? I'm not sure they have cards to really build anything else, so that will end their turn. Red's turn. Okay, they rolled a Mustang, and unfortunately red does not have access to Mustang, but yellow and blue do, so each will get 1. And let's look at red's cards. So if you remember, red was saving up to build a fort as well, and the hope was that a lumber would be rolled so they wouldn't have to trade cards in. Since they do have a port, they could trade in 4 cards to 1 to get that lumber they need. I think it'd probably be a waste of resources to do that. Blue's musketeers are pretty far off. It would take them at least 4 or 5 turns to get over here. By that time, I think a lumber would be drawn, so they're actually going to hold off. I think they're going to keep their musketeer right there. So my camera actually stopped recording, and I lost quite a bit of the game, so I'm having to backtrack to where I left off, and I did my best to reset the pieces. It was pretty frustrating. So I think where we left off, though, is red should not have their fort yet. Basically where the camera cut off is red needs a lumber in order to purchase their fort, and that was the end of their turn. So we'll act like that didn't happen, and we'll keep the game going, and it is yellow's turn. Okay, so yellow rolled a lumber, and it looks like, yep, everyone has access to lumber. Okay, so yellow is pursuing their goal of building a colony on this hill tile, so they'll just go ahead and move their musketeer up since you need a land unit in order to purchase a colony, and they have all the resources they need except for the 2nd stone. They are going to trade in 5 resources, which will almost deplete their bank for that stone. Any other circumstance, I'd probably try saving up for it, but they have no access to stone. You don't collect resources from the tile that your colony is on, so they really have no option but to trade in 5 resources. Actually, they'll save their iron. That's worth a lot. But they'll trade in their 5 resources for that stone. Okay, so that's their first stone. They had 1 stone from the beginning of the game. They'll do their 2 lumber, a wheat, and an iron ore. And now yellow has officially built their second colony, which is a great advantage this early on in the game. They'll be able to collect double the resources, but now they definitely need to pivot their focus to building up their military since they are pretty stretched thin, only having the single musketeer to defend these two colonies. Fortunately, they're kind of cut off from the rest of the world by this canal. They're on their own island, but that probably won't last for long. They really need to act now to secure their defenses and secure their island. Okay, blue's turn. All right, and blue rolled a fish, which is unfortunate for them since they have no access, but yellow and red both get a fish. Okay, so let's check out Blue's resources. This might have been messed up since my camera stopped, but basically Blue is wanting to secure this middle piece of land to build their second colony. Now they do have 3 iron, and I think in the spirit of them pursuing an offensive military advantage or strategy, I think it'd be fun to throw a wrench in it and have them build a cannon this early on in the game. That will put a lot of pressure on red and I think sort of shake things up. So they have 3 iron, but they will need to trade in the rest of their resources to build that cannon. So let me see, they got a stone, they got 3 wood, and a hill. And like I said, I think I messed up some of the cards when my camera stopped, but we're just going to pick it up from here. But anyways, they are going to purchase their first cannon, and that's pretty cool. They're also going to move up one of their musketeers to continue putting pressure on red. So that was Blue's turn. Now we'll go to red. And fortunately for them, they rolled a lumber, which is just what they need. Actually, I need to reshuffle these cards. But that's just what they need to build their fort. And it looks like everyone gets a lumber. Yellow actually gets 2, so you can see that's the benefit of having a second colony. So good for them. So red now has the 3 stone they need and the lumber in order to purchase their fort. So they'll go ahead, trade in those stone, lumber, and they now have a fort. This will offer them some protection, some time to pursue their strategy of economic advantage. And we're actually going to pause the game here. Let me know if you all like this in the comments. I think it was a lot of fun. I was getting pretty into it, and perhaps we could pick this up at a different time. Breaking down Red's performance though, I think they did a good job of pursuing their economic advantage while maintaining defense against Blue. I think if the game were to continue, they could very easily have the resources to build a colony on this wheat tile, which by the way, you can build colonies if they're separated by water. I need to add that to the rules. But then building their second colony there would give them a great advantage. It would give them a foothold into Yellow's island. They would obviously collect more resources, but they could also very easily build a bridge right between them and get their second trade bonus, going from 4-1 to 3-1. And that'd be a great starting off point for them. Their biggest threat or concern would be being sandwiched in between blue and red, especially if they were to colonize Yellow's island. They would immediately be fighting 2 fronts. So I think in the long run, red would definitely be who gets beat up on. They would have to be very strategic on how they navigate that, fighting on 2 fronts. But thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, this is the kind of stuff I love to do on my channel, diving deep into strategy. I think it's so much fun, and I appreciate you watching.